Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for another edition of our YUNOREVIEW series where I go over a series of records that I did not get a chance to review in this month, and now I'm going over them in brief, gauntlet style in this video, just to get my thoughts out there on some projects that I thought were worth mentioning, that I thought were worth addressing. Just couldn't really, do a full-length review on them. You know what it is at this point because we do this every month. So let's get right into it. Ba-bam! The new Wilco record is not a bad addition to the band's catalog. Basically, the group comes through with another batch of tracks that are a very melancholic, hushed indie folk music. They help make this sound, this style, what it is today, so how could you not admire the band for sticking to their guns? In my opinion, this one's sadder and drearier than any other album Wilco has dropped this decade, especially in comparison with Schmilko, which was a little rough around the edges, freewheeling, wild, sometimes silly for Wilco, which I thought it was kind of cool that they were letting loose on this record. This album is very much going back in the other direction. It is very gray. It is very dejected. Some solid tunes on this one here and there, but for the most part, that sadness that seems to be permeating every corner of this record, or at least what feels like sadness, it doesn't come off as all that potent. I think it's a bit one-dimensional. While in one breath I admire this record's consistency, I wish it was just a bit more versatile. New record from guitarist and songwriter extraordinaire Santana. I was pretty excited to get deeper into it once I heard some clips and a few tracks from it, given that it seems like it's a return to form, honestly, to some of the more jazz fusion sounds that Santana was known for back in the day, but now he's bringing in some elements of Afro-funk, Afro-jazz, which is great, but I can't help but feel as I listen more to this one, it just lacks the finesse of Santana's best works from the 70s. While I admire the musical fusion that he's going for here, and it's definitely the best thing this album has going for it. In terms of the rhythms, in terms of the guitar solos, I just think it could all be a bit tighter. When talking about a genre like jazz fusion, I happen to feel like tightness as well as incredible chemistry between all the musicians involved is pretty significant, and I'm just not hearing it to the extent that I would like to on this record. Some points of it just feel a little clunky. A lot of the group vocals almost feel tacked on, not seamlessly woven into the rest of the instrumentation. I admire what Santana was trying to do on this record. It's certainly a welcome change of pace from his more commercial works over the past decade or so, but can't say this one really did it for me. New Mayhem record, I think is fine. I don't really have any major criticisms about it other than it's, pretty by the numbers. A few tracks here and there are especially vicious and stand out as a result of that, but for the most part, it's a pretty meat and potatoes black metal release at this point. I'm not sure if there's really anything else to add. If you are a traditionalist, if you just want to hear black metal in its most straightforward form without, I guess, too lo-fi of a recording, give it a shot. New Omni record, Networker, a relatively new band whose record over here is dropping via Sub Pop. That's how I found out about them. That and some of the teaser material from this thing that read as some very herky, jerky, angular, frenetic, somewhat spastic, old-school post-punk. Kind of love that sound, and the more I heard Omni try to pursue it, the more it felt like they were sort of capturing that old school aesthetic, but the songwriting and the playing were not really anything to write home about. While I understand that trying to rekindle this sound requires quite a bit of talent, I feel like the band didn't really put much of their own twist on it or go above and beyond to enhance it or anything. A handful of good songs on it, and if you're just nostalgic for this era of post-punk music, give it a try. But outside of that, I couldn't really find anything else to just throw praise onto with this one. The new Jeffrey Lewis and the Voltage record, which has some pretty decent Lewis songs on it, especially LPs, which is an amazing record collector's anthem. If you are a vinyl head, you will absolutely love some of the stuff that Jeff is saying on this track. He is as funny and as clever as ever on at least the first leg of the album. Then there is an interlude cut where I think kind of, I guess, marks a change in sound quality, because in my opinion, a lot of the tunes in the second half are nowhere near as funny or as memorable or as lyrically bold. So, I don't know, to me it's really kind of a tale of two halves. One half that I really enjoy, the other half that very much pales in comparison, and it just is what it is, I guess. But if you love your punk music with a bit of folk, or you love your folk music with a bit of punk, and you love very verbose, wordy, heady songs, give Jeffrey Lewis a shot, especially if you have no idea who this guy is, because he's very much underrated. Techno technician, techno wizard Andy Stott, he is back with a new collection of tracks which is being billed as a double EP, and the material here is, I guess, his slowest, spaciest batch of songs yet. It's like he's trying to make as little noise and bring as little speed into the equation as possible. The experience is definitely unique from any other Andy Stott record. I would say it's unique in comparison to really most techno records, but I can't say the pacing or the textures or just really kind of delivering these compositions in the way that Andy does all that much for me. Certainly a novel idea, a cool approach, a different angle, unexpected, but I'm really not getting that much out of it. For me, it just sounds underwhelming. I wish there was more of a groove, or I wish there were more sounds just filling up these empty spaces to make it more of a, I guess, enveloping, more ambient experience. The new Girlfriend of the Year record, with its short, synthetic abstractions about, like, TV shows. The track about SpongeBob is hilarious, in a way. Listen, this might just be one of the worst albums of the year, but there is something about it that makes me wonder if this is, like, the future of music as we know it. Plus, how could you not want to try something with this album cover? This album cover is something. Frank Ocean collaborator Vegyn, is that how you pronounce this artist's name? Vegyn? I'm assuming so. Well, Vegyn is a pretty talented and versatile producer. Can't say after listening to this record, though, that I'm hearing much in terms of, like, compositional or songwriting talent. I mean, that can certainly be honed, or more song structures can be brought in to make this collection of songs a bit more impactful. But for the most part, what I'm hearing here just feels like a loose collection of rough ideas, motifs, and sketches, many of which are really cool. But outside of that, I'm having a hard time really enjoying or finding more praise for this record, because everything, while there are some cool ideas thrown out here and there, it's all just so fleeting. The new Wiki record, given some of the teaser tracks, is one I was very excited to listen to, however, ended up being disappointed by how uneventful a lot of the deeper cuts on this thing are. Sad to say, it's really the singles that ended up being the most interesting on the album. There are some cool beats here and there, and he picks some good guests throughout the track list too, but there are so many moments where I feel like the songwriting is just underwhelming or forgettable. Wiki's flows or verses are just okay, kind of standard for him, nothing all too new or groundbreaking or, I guess, exciting. I mean, if you're the type of person who has to hear everything going on in the New York Underground, I would say give it a listen, but it's not gonna stick out to you any more than I think the best stuff the city has to offer. Every year I get a question or two about the Claypool Lennon Delirium, and I'm yet to really formally review a project from this duo, and I am kind of shocked because I feel like I would be just chomping at the bit to do such a thing because of this meeting of the minds here. I mean, Sean Lennon and one of my favorite musicians of all time, Les Claypool, collaborating on an entire record of songs. But I'm just, yet to hear a project from them that to me feels reflective of their unique talents. I feel almost like when they get together on a record, they cancel each other out in a way. Not only that, but I feel like vocally, Sean Lennon and Les Claypool, obviously they disagree, and fans of this project disagree, and that's fine. But I just think they're oil and water, man. I just do not get what exactly these guys do with each other that they either couldn't do separately or they think is so incredible that they couldn't possibly make it in any other context with anyone else, that it must be made. It just really must be going over my head or something, because I'm yet to hear anything out of this very psych revivalist collection of tracks, the new one I'm talking about, that it really just kind of speaks to me. I mean, it's a little zany, but the songs are subpar in my opinion. Sometimes it comes off a little grating, obnoxious, and with Lennon and Claypool constantly switching off, there's just so little consistency to the whole thing. So, I don't know. It's cool that they're doing it and they're together, and I commend them for sticking with what they're doing here, but I just get so little out of it. The new Floating Points album, given some of what I heard prior to the release, I was pretty psyched to hear it, but then ended up being a little underwhelmed by the overall experience, as it pretty much just feels like very inoffensive so-so IDM, kind of groovy, kind of linear, a few interesting synthetic textures here and there, but, nothing really blowing me away. Josh Homme's The Desert Sessions is back after quite a while with a short little record with who knows. I mean, he's working with like just about anybody who will walk into the studio and has a bit of a profile on this record, which I think is kind of unique about this project. It's a fun, cool, interesting thing about this project. It's amazing that he's able to pull all of these sessions together and make what happens happen on these Desert Session records. But creatively, it's all over the place. Songwriting wise, it's very inconsistent, especially like that tweeting song on the back end is like 10 shades of terrible. And frankly, the more I listen to this, the more I'm just wondering, where is this wild, eccentric, fun, colorful attitude when it comes to the last Queen's record, Villains? Because that album was like one-dimensional as fuck. And so sonically gray that it lacked character. Character that I think turns up on this record. Just hope I hear it on the next Queen's, I guess. New Kai Whiston album, producer who I've reviewed on this channel in the past on his Kai Whiston Bitch record. Also that new collaborative project with Baby and his boy Igloo Ghost. Hearing what he's doing on this record, I can see why there's a lot of excitement for it. I can see why there's a massive amount of hype for it. I can see why people are finding it interesting. And there are a good handful of songs, especially in the first leg, that I personally think are great, where Kai is drifting away from some of the trap that he's known for and fusing some of those elements with more wondrous, organic instrumentation. It hits hard, yet it's also pretty. But then there's a point where he diverges from this fusion of styles entirely and just starts trying to reverse engineer as a solo electronic music producer with some guests here and there. Experimental rock music, post-rock music, a little bit of, I guess, art or indie rock as well. And I just feel like the results pale in comparison to anything that is so obviously a point of reference and influence for him on this record. Like, I would much rather listen to a Godspeed song or any number of experimental or post-rock artists who he's just trying to copy on this, essentially. It's certainly admirable that he took this risk, went in this direction. It certainly seems to be paying off amongst his fans, who are very enamored with the project and didn't expect someone of Kai's caliber to drop an album like this. I didn't expect him to drop an album like this. Frankly, I think there are few electronic music producers out there who would feel bold enough to do so. And I also think it's very cool that this record is reflective of Kai's obviously diverse tastes, but does he recreate and embody these sounds in a way where I just enjoy them within the context of this record? Not really. All things considered, the new Blood Incantation project is a pretty good death metal record. It has a great recording, very heavy, very brutal, very crushing, but everything rings through so clear. The vocals, the guitars, the bass, the drums, really everything. Sonically and compositionally, the band is a bit more progressive than your average death metal group. Some of the riffs and playing are a bit technical, some of the song structures are winding and really add to the flavor of these tracks, and yet they never veer too far away from that classic and morbid sound. Now, is every riff on this record great? In my opinion, not really, and I think the 18-minute closing track is a bit convoluted and could have easily been broken down into a few different parts. But still, the material on here that is good is very good, and I think is worth checking out for any metal fan, really even someone who may be just curious about death metal and just looking to get a good example of how the genre sounds and what its genetic makeup is. Ugh. I have been returning to this new hot chip record for months now, really, because it's been out for so long, and honestly, every time I listen to it, it just feels more and more underwhelming. Less of it really sticks with me. I'm just not really sure. I mean, Hot Chip has never truly been one of my favorite indie-tronic or synth-pop bands, but I've always thought they had plenty of catchy material throughout their discography, and I'm just not finding that to be the case on this new record over here. I just thought it was very bland and their most forgettable record yet. Zishin, and that is the YUNOREVIEW for this month. All of the projects that I talked about are listed down below. Over here next to my head is another video that you could check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, YUNOREVIEW, albums, music, forever.